What is up, everyone? It's your host, Brody Vinson,
Ryan Santa.
and we're doing another episode of Deal Flow Live. If you're tuning in, you are hearing this one day after we've recorded it. We have 4th of July stuff going on this week, and so we are recording it one day early. And I am going to keep talking. Actually, you know what? I'm going to hand it off to Ryan to do the intro while I fix this microphone since it's falling down.
Thank you, Brody. So we are going to be taking a look at some service businesses today. We're just kind of walking through, and we always love our service businesses, so we decided that we were going to take a deeper dive into a couple different ones. We got some really nice ones specifically. My personal favorite is a lawn care one that's got some really big numbers. You know how much we like big numbers here, but I think it's important to realize that the service-based area is a market that not a lot of people consider because of the owner-operator mentality that a lot of them are built upon. And while that is true, and it is a business that you might have to get your hands dirty, no pun intended, in, the upsides are pretty significant, either as somebody who buys one to then develop and sell to a larger entity, or as somebody who just simply is in that industry already and wants to grow their own set of skills but without working for somebody. So I think there's a lot of potential there. I think there's a lot of great deals out there, specifically in small home services. Obviously, you know how when we've done our episodes, we always like to see that we have corporate accounts and whatnot. But realistically, a lot of these do service houses and communities. So that's going to be what we're seeing a lot of today. But I think we got a lot of good stuff in store. So, we are swinging that mic today. Yeah, so we just want to make sure you guys got an episode. We love doing this show, and quite frankly, even though we both work a lot during our week, this is one of our favorite things to do every Monday or Tuesday, depending on when you're watching this. So I think we're getting a lot of value about this one. We're going to really dive into the what makes this, because recently we've had some pretty big things happening in that industry between the two of us.
We have. Yeah, we've been trying to dive into the home services industry because, like Ryan was describing, there's a lot of potential there. One thing we like to think about as we assess a business opportunity is, if you can imagine what a lot of people were thinking when COVID first hit. They were shaken up in their industry and things were uncertain. There was kind of a recession going on. There's been other points in history where there have been recessions, and some businesses suffered, fell apart, got shaken up, and people's lives changed through that. So one thing about home services we love is that it is what we call recession resistant. There's no such thing as recession proof, because everything does suffer in a recession. But home services are more or less recession resistant in a lot of cases, because grass is always going to grow. ACs are always going to break. Stuff like that is always going to need to be done and be serviced. So if you can build or take over a really good home services company, you can reasonably expect that you're going to stay in business for a long time, and you can build upon that momentum and really get somewhere. So we've been looking into some of these home services business just to see where the opportunities lie, and we've been really liking what we've found. And in many cases, a lot of them are really big cash cows and have great customer bases that have been with them a long time. They've got people that have been with them a long time, and there's a lot of good, clean money to be made in this space if you can just come in and understand how to bring good systems to what's happening and new technology and just expand on what's going on. So, Ryan, what's been one of your favorite home services categories that we've seen so far, just based on the research we've been doing?
I've always been partial to the electrical contracting area and to the HVAC. We coined the term. Maybe somebody else did. We coined the term the trifecta. We call it electrical, plumbing, and HVAC, because those are the three things that, if they stop, you will want them back as fast as possible. And odds are, you probably don't want to risk doing it yourself. But electrical contracting is great because obviously everybody loves Sparkies, and whether it's low voltage, high voltage, or anything in between, you need to have electrical power running to stuff. Otherwise, it gets real hairy real fast when you don't have power, as we all know, especially with hurricane season coming up. And HVAC, because we are entering into the dog days of summer, so to speak, and I think we hit like 99 today here in Orlando, and I can't, the building that I was in today, the AC is on the fritz, and there have been technicians there for 12 hours a day, I think, for the last 2 weeks, still trying to fix it. And boy, are they making $1.50, man. My God. I mean, it is expensive. I was talking to a building manager today. So, if you can even get in a little bit of what those guys are making, which they earn it. But two things that when they fail, you want it fixed fast and you'll pay whatever it takes to get it back.
So true. Yeah, like you mentioned there, you have to just pay whatever it takes to get it back. And so many times these things do just happen out of necessity, and there's always going to be money there, a lot of money to be made. And one thing we're seeing is that one of the biggest challenges in the space is the labor. There's a massive shortage of good labor to be had in the home services space. And so if you're looking to get into it, there's a lot of opportunity, but I also say that to say, it's just massively underserved. Like, you can come in, and if you have a good idea of how to source labor and be a decent person that knows how to build a team, then you can do a lot in this space.
I'm just thinking about this TikTok somebody sent me where it's this guy and he's like crying. He's like, we don't need more influencers. We need electricians.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, it is a very true thing. Like you're saying, there's a push for people to go into trades, and I think trade schools are starting to become more normalized and popular thanks to COVID in part. And I think because of this lack, we're seeing a lot more people that we've talked to say that they literally just have to say no to jobs. And even those people they say no to, it's not like, I'm going to go somewhere else. They're like, well, please tell me when you can. Because they're at the mercy of it. So getting that talent in is very important. But on the other side of that coin, knowing how to nurture that talent. So a lot of, we've also been hearing that, they're not up to speed. The new technicians are too green. They need, trade schools do give a good understanding. I've never been to one. Brody, I don't think you've ever done trade school either. But obviously any sort of schooling, it's never like it is in the textbook for the most part. You need that hands-on. So learning to adapt and how to bring in and onboard those new talents, getting them mentored, paired up with the experienced people, and getting that brain to hand connection is something that I think gets overlooked sometimes, and people don't understand. It takes a bit of time, but when they're there, and if your bonuses are set, your pay's set, you got a person for life as long as everything's intact around that.
Yeah, it's all about retention. And the one thing I've noticed in talking to some of them is that they struggle with the retention aspect. And I think that in a lot of cases, it's because they struggle to think outside the box. They don't bring certain tactics that work in one industry to their industry. And they kind of just do what they were taught and don't really try to switch things up. So that being said, like we've been saying, there's a lot of opportunity to just disrupt things in the space and to really do it differently than a lot of people in your geographic area.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I think a lot of these people who start these businesses, they're techs, they start their own business, they get things going, they get a little bit of traction, they get their admin, they get the base down, they start scaling and grooving, and they're real good. They build it, and then it gets to a point where they're like, oh, this is big. I didn't realize it. So they get to a point they want to back off. They just want to they're passionate. They just want to do their thing. Somebody else take care of that. I was talking to my mom today actually about, it was like, how, talking about her business, how the numbers been, what's the blank, the year over year, how's it looking compared to last month? And she goes, right. If it doesn't have pause, I don't know what's happening, but I've hired people who tell me that things are going well. So if you like, you can talk to Steph about that. And I was like, then we had our conversation today. And I was like, yeah, that's like what every business owner that we've talked to has been like, that they're like, our dream is to just do what we do and go home, and somebody else can figure out if we need to hire more people or we need to, do that stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot of what I call accidental business owners, just like Ryan was hinting at there, where they just found themselves with a business after being good at what they do, and they didn't necessarily want it to go that direction, but they're happy about the money. And if you can help them get a handle on it and just build good organization around it, then they're more than happy to let you run the show a little bit or kind of phase themselves out or something like that.
Which is exactly what Scale for Sale is, one of the things that they do. If your business is growing and you're looking to maybe exit at some point or looking to develop it into something larger, Scale for Sale is a great consulting firm that does small hands-on consulting that really does a lot for a community and for people who are looking for that real intimate approach that cares about their business. So look them up.
Thanks for the plug.
Oh, you're welcome.
Nice. Well, with that being said, let's go ahead and get into a listing here. And Ryan, I called a little bit of an audible in the background here, and I found another one that could also work. We've got a landscaping business and a plumbing business.
Ooh,
Which
okay.
one would you prefer to look at?
This is the landscaping one. Those numbers
Let's
were
do it.
big and juicy, and I liked them.
What if I told you the numbers on the plumbing business are bigger and juicier?
Whoa, holy wow. I mean, I mean, toilets, I do not want mine to not work. So, yeah, but still, wow, bigger than landscaping. Wow, okay. Yeah, let's start with landscaping.
Not by a huge amount, just a little bit, but it is bigger. So I'm going to go ahead and share this one, and we'll take a look at what's going on behind the scenes here. So this is a large plumbing company in Central Florida that is for sale. And I actually know, well, I don't know this guy, Jason in particular, but I actually know some great people over at Hedgestone Business Advisors. And it's a great brokerage. So if this is a business you're interested or looking into, I definitely recommend those guys. They're really solid, really professional.
And if you're from Hedgestone, sponsor us, please.
Well, I might be doing something with them. I actually have a little bit of an in there where I might be talking to the CEO to do some kind of podcast at some point. So that'd be pretty cool.
Oh.
They're the thing I like about them a lot is they're a very like social media forward brokerage, which is the opposite of common in the space. You don't really see it with any other ones, but the CEO of Hedgestone has a really big following. He's got like a massive social media following. And so they do a lot of their sourcing of deals and like gathering of deal flow through social media, which is pretty interesting.
Get him on the pod?
He is down. He's just a busy guy. So when he's in Orlando, he wants to do it.
So they're very easy to reach, and they're active on social media across accounts, and it's really easy to kind of talk to them about the listings and get the information that you need. Is that's kind of what their edge is? Yeah,
and they operate nationally, which is really, really cool. They're actually based up near where you're from. So they're based kind of in New York, but they also operate like very heavily in New Jersey. And one of the reps that I deal with, the advisors that I deal with directly, is based in New Jersey. And they've just got a really solid, tight ship that they're running. They've got all these teams that are like subject matter teams. So if you come in as like a professional services company, they have a professional services brokerage team, and they handle that specifically. So yeah, I like them a lot.
Very cool. Yeah, so that could be really exciting, guys. We might be able to talk to somebody who's doing a lot right now. So that's great. Wow.
Yeah, so we'll keep that line open. But just a cool brokerage. It was. I don't often see them listed on these ones that we look at because they have such a deep buyer network that I think they do a lot of their work behind the scenes versus directly listing them on the sites like this. So it was just cool to see their name. I haven't seen it on one of our episodes before.
Find.
It is.
Wow. Okay, let's dig in.
So yeah, we've got a large plumbing company in Central Florida, cash flowing $1.9 million. They're asking about $9 million. So it's a fairly large multiple. It's over a 4x multiple. It's about a 4.5.
But you
a little over a 4.5. But
those numbers.
It's a solid business. It's been in business for over 20 years, which we love to see. Great reviews online, mostly residential work, but it has municipal and commercial projects also. Covers all of Florida. So it's based in Central Florida, but they must have a few offices. Obviously, they're pretty big. You don't often see businesses this size in this space, at least not listed on here. So this is very interesting. I think that it's a little bit of a unique find for us. They've got 50 employees, and they kind of just spell everything out here in the description, as you can see, which I thought was really interesting. That's one of the reasons.
They're professional, that this is not their first rodeo, by the way that things are listed and how they're itemized. So that's always a big sign that this is a very professional, well thought out brokerage with their information. So a green flag overall in that respect. I think it's one of those things that I've learned as I've gotten deeper into it that specifically, trades, you're going to want to make sure that the licensing that you need to hold specifically is understood. Some do, some don't. A lot of times you can get the owner to stay on as a license holder for a fee, but sometimes you have to go out and get certain fee. Like you don't have to go become the actual plumber itself, but you will have to go through a licensing. So something to remember when you're dealing with these businesses that sometimes the owner wants to stay on and get paid as a license holder, and other times like you have 2 years to get this thing and then I'm out. So and then the business becomes like Cinderella's carrot is a pumpkin.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely it's important to have an understanding of what the plan is there, and that would certainly have to be the case for this one. So you'd want to know that. And on that point, we should look at the reason for the sale. One of the partners has been elected, and the other partner has another venture. So that's interesting. Obviously, you would be buying into a very deep network here. Clearly, to get to a business to this point, right, there's a big network here, but one of the partners is apparently an elected official, so that's pretty cool.
Wild. I just want to know that story at this point. That's the most unique one I've seen.
It is.
Normally, when we see the pursuing other ventures thing, we're always a little cautious. Like, why are you doing that? What's wrong? I mean, clearly, if the other guy wasn't elected, he'd probably still be staying on. But I guess whatever he's doing is going to take all of his time. So, it seems like it's just like, okay, we've kind of done this and we're phasing this out of our lives. So on that, I feel it's legitimate. And besides the company that's backing them, I feel like would do their due diligence to see if this was a downward trailing. They wouldn't represent somebody's downward.
And it mentions that in here. I mean, assuming this is being represented correctly, which I think they do a really great job representing everything. They're projected to do 10 to 12 million compared to the 14.38 million from before. So that's something you'd want to look at. That is a dip down from the year before, it sounds like, but they also say with better profit margins, 20 to 25%. So let's split the difference here. Let's call it 22.5% times 11 million. That would be about 2.475 in cash flow. So that actually would be markedly better. I mean, that would be a massive jump up. So if that is accurate, you'd have to look at the books for 2024, but that would be a pretty major deal. With 2.5 in cash flow, if that actually is going to be the case, then you're talking about more like a 3.6x multiple. So, I mean, you always want to take an average of the last few years, but this is interesting. And, a business this big, if it has a good management team, which I would guess it probably does, because they mention in here that neither owner has much involvement. The business runs itself. Everyone kind of says that, but if that is the case, it's probably because they have a decent management team. And if they're planning on staying around, then you probably wouldn't have to do much.
And that would also lend itself to the price tag, because as we've seen, businesses that are, quote, what's that? Owner is not, everybody has terms for it, but whenever an owner doesn't really work in their business, that drives that price right up. Even if the books are just okay, something that's turnkey is always going to cost you more. And something's like, oh, I am the owner, I am operator a bit. So always something to factor in. And I think that's a very appropriate price. I think it'd be one of them, you can maybe get some term leniency on it, given the other ventures.
Well, they also mention in here that it's SBA pre-approved up to the max amount of $5 million. So, I mean, you only have to come up with $4 million here. Obviously, easier said than done. You're talking about a pretty major buyer here, but it also says seller financing available. So it could be that they're open to it mostly being SBA and seller financing.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like something where they're very flexible on how this is going to work. And I think that it says a lot to their business acumen, and also to who's representing them, giving them a very solid base of this is realistically how this is going to have to work, and this is realistically how the market operates, rather than, I asking for $2 million, I expect $2 million, and I'll give you 20K seller finance, like some of the ones we've seen. So I think that's part owner, part rep. I like it. I think that if I had 4 million or I knew people who were interested in doing a venture and they had a collective 4 million, I feel that I would be able to take this to them and feel good about saying, I'll do my part if you guys want to invest in this. And I feel like this could make some very good returns for us all. So I would say this is a very good business to get into if you have the capabilities or if you have the network of people who want to get into this. Because I'd pitch this all day to people who are investors.
Exactly. Yeah, I think the deeper I get into this whole world, there's a lot of investors out there who, it sounds like a crazy problem to have, but have way too much money and just simply can't even managing all of it. They want to make returns on it, but they have too much money to possibly allocate to different sources. And there are actually people out there like that are looking for opportunities like this. And so we've started looking into some things like that, but this would be a good thing to bring to someone like that.
Yeah, there's always if you want to broker the deal with the broker and represent a buyer, you can always figure that out too. Say, hey, if I help you get this deal, can I get 1%? That's a big 1%. So yeah, there's many ways to get involved in this, but I think this is based on who's doing it and how they're presenting it. I'm having trouble finding anything wrong with this. Did you see anything that you'd even be cautious of?
I wouldn't say this makes me cautious per se. There is one thing that I am not sure about here, and I would have to understand more about its relevance and importance to the business, which I'm sure there is some, but there is a 1 acre property valued at $500,000 included in the price. So that's something I may try to carve out if I was buying this business. Maybe I would ask, hey, Mr. Owner, I know you don't want to spend the time in the business, but what if I don't want to buy the property? You want to just lease it to me? And that could potentially knock off $500K from the price because it's valued at $500K.
Yeah.
One thing that, again, not like a red flag or a concern, but I just don't have enough information on. It says vehicles and machinery included in the price as well, but it doesn't actually list what the FF&E is. So I would want to know more about that. I'd be interested to see. I would assume so too. A business this size, I would guess it's to the tune of $1 million or $2 million at least.
Probably closer to 2.
Yeah, I would think so too, based on what we looked at before. And they service all of Florida. I would assume they have a lot of vehicles.
Everybody's moving to Florida still.
One thing I saw that was two things I saw that were very interesting here. They keep a 40 to 60 day backlog of work. I love to see that. That means they're really solid going forward. You don't see something like that often with a smaller business. So they keep a very solid backlog of work, but they also say that they do 45 to 55 jobs on average a month and an average ticket of $20,000. So those are giant jobs. I would be interested to see what the average job looks like for them, because to me, it kind of can, and maybe there's something I just don't know or don't understand here, but I feel like it kind of conflicts with what I'm seeing here, which is mostly residential. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, as we know, billing and how you present financials, there's many ways to do it, and there's no right way. There are plenty of wrong ways, but there is no technical right way. You can do it many, obviously there's different ways to look at it. Perhaps the 20,000 is a collective, maybe per job. They're billing per job on a weekly or monthly basis. So however they're structuring the per job, or maybe it's one truck and one job is their route for the day, and maybe they collect, they're averaging, I would say. So clearly somebody who has maybe makes a couple grand on their route, maybe somebody who has oh, hey, the basement's flooded and the pipes are rotted, it's gonna be like a 7K job. So I think also they probably have some bigger contracts out with maybe that 20K is also, if they're doing residential, that's what it says. Could be apartment complexes. I wouldn't consider apartments commercial. So maybe they have a lot of deals with, because we know they're popping up everywhere. If they have HOA deals, property management deals, those could be 20K tickets because they're on a retainer fee plus XYZ, because I know most places don't have on-site plumbers.
And the backlog leads me to believe that a lot of it is like more preventative maintenance than like as needed, like when things go wrong.
Yeah,
For
sure.
So that's one really big glowing point for this business. I mean, amongst many others, is that's a good position to be in as a business. Yeah, I'd be very interested to see more about it, but that's a solid business. What red flags do you see, if any?
I mean, I don't really see any for the most part. I feel like the only things that I'm like I said, usually when someone's like, I'm going another business route, I'm always like, why? Why would you leave a money-making business? I mean, look, I get a shiny object syndrome, but I would still say I'm retiring from my business, even if I wasn't, because I think, like you said, the billing to the job thing, I'm like, that usually comes up normally. Like, okay, so what do your job breakouts look like? What percentage are apartments, townhomes, single family? Like, give me the breakdown. That usually comes up in conversation anyways. I can't really see anything that's glaring to me. I think it's well thought out. I think it's well put together. The information's clear for what we need. You can easily print this out, highlight what you want, and say, here are my kill points. And I feel that they've, I'd like to know the FF&E. I think that's not, I always think it's nice to do a little bit of legwork and have that listed, but if there's a lot of stuff, maybe you just don't have time to kind of figure out what everything is worth. But as long as I get a list of everything, I can kind of figure it out for myself.
What else would you want to know? I've got something if you don't. So the 50 employees, right? I would want to know what the actual organizational setup is, because they say the owners aren't that involved.
So, I mean,
they always say that.
Yeah, but I'm assuming at least of that, we're going to say conservatively, based on the amount of money they're bringing in from plumbing jobs, I'm going to say out of 50 employees, probably 35 to 38 are going to be plumbers. Then you're going to have, I'm assuming, at least one bookkeeper, 2 admin, 3 managers at least, probably a GM. Your back office is going to be very light considering. Maybe they have an IT person if they have an in-depth system. Probably at least 2 salespeople too. I'm assuming if they're getting this much work, there's somebody's calling or emailing about their services. So we're doing. They do mention that. They say jobs come from direct mail, Google /SEO, and referral. So 1 to 2 people are doing that at least. So I would safely say probably close to 40 of those are plumbers at least. Then you got a couple managers. So that's my assumption, but I'm sure the makeup of, payments and salaries would tell me pretty quickly when we do the breakdowns of like, okay, so show me your payroll. How's it expanded? How's it, reduced? Who do you think is a good fit as a buyer for a business like this? Like who should think about buying a business like this? So I don't want to rule this one out, because I feel like this is something that I think this is a business that if you had, how to phrase this without sounding like just ridiculous. I think a lot of people without the experience could do well managing this business, even if they don't come from this background, because of the policies in place. However, I do think that where they're pricing it at, you would probably, if you were not experienced, need to get people on board with that money. And they would not give that money to somebody they didn't feel either had experience in business and or that industry. So yeah, while I think a lot of people could do this business, I think the price tag does a good job of putting them in we're only going to sell to people who are going to comfortably be able to run this well, because they have access to this capital. So I think somebody who's a seasoned investor, who has somebody who's either a good boots on the ground guy or is looking to do something where they want to expand their portfolio, maybe they haven't gotten into home services yet, this is probably a pretty good start to that if you have the change. This is going to be a very nice dent in that area and probably poised for rolling up some other ones. Yeah, I think so too. Like I do think that it's someone who has the industry experience for sure, because
We should spend some more time talking about that. Like just having like if you are going to go try to raise money. I mean, I haven't really raised money on a large scale before, but I think that having the industry experience on board is a big thing. That's the type of thing that someone's going to, or just previous business success experience. That's something that the person's going to want to see because they want to feel confident that their money is going to be well taken care of.
Yeah.
What else do you think they would want to see?
I mean, I think that's any investor worth their salt is going to want to see proof of purchase or proof of experience. Nobody's just going to cut checks to people they don't know. I mean, we were talking before this on some really funny and interesting stories about early 1900s, 1800s, like con men, businessmen, and how they would do these elaborate schemes and deals, which are just incredible, really. But I think when it comes down to if you're I think the systems are in place for anyone with a decent head on their shoulders to run the business. But with that price tag, you're either going to need to be an established veteran of the area of the business or have a very good track record of success, either in small business or in a larger setting with a backing from other people to say that you're that good. Because when I hand you a check for $4 million, there's an expectation that comes with that. Not only that I'm going to get my money back, but that it's going to come back hopefully quicker and a lot more than I gave you. And, we've talked about our philosophy is that when we have investors, we plan to pay out over an X amount of time in a clear contract. However, we always work to pay them back as fast as possible and with a little bit extra, because we want them to have that nice kind of warm and fuzzy feeling of, wow, these guys really took care of me. I want to give them money again sometime, and I want to give them more money. So I think somebody's going to take care of their investors is somebody who is known to already have that track record. So don't feel bad if you can't go up to a VC and get, hey, I need $4 million for this plumbing business. You're not going to get it. But if you worked adjacent to trades and you have that experience of working in, even not even selling, if you scaled one, you took it from 3 million to 5 million, you know what you're doing. I think you can do this money thing good, and they're just going to hand you the check, theoretically. But I think that's a good way of looking at it.
I agree. I think the industry experience, the previous track record, I think having the rest of the team well rounded out is a big thing too. I think they're going to want to know who the rest of the team is. Do you have previous experience with the rest of the team? And what was your previous experience together? So they want to feel like the team is going to stay cohesive too. But if you've got all those things in order, you might just be able to go ask for a whole shit ton of money, and you might even just get it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the rule number one is always ask for what you want. But don't be surprised if somebody says no. This is the end of that statement. How important do you feel it is when deciding on somebody, say, let's, from the investor perspective, let's say you're doing a deal like this, do you want to see somebody who has a project management and team building background, or just somebody who has strictly done trade stuff, scaled and sold? How important is that? I guess to say, how important is that people management aspect to you when reviewing somebody's credentials, say, for that sort of endeavor?
How important do I think it would be to an investor?
Yes, if you're signing a check for somebody, you look at the resume, you don't see a lot of team, because I think we can both agree that scaling and selling a business doesn't necessarily mean that you have tons of experience working with large groups of people, because you can scale a business in a variety of ways. You happen to have a lot of experience with people and scaling a business, which means you're the double threat. But when you were reviewing somebody's resume for $4 million for a plumbing business, if you see, okay, they got some trade experience, and wow, they really worked with a lot of groups of people, versus somebody's like, okay, they got a lot of trade experience, but they've never really managed more than 2 or 3 people. How does that affect your idea as an investor?
A lot. I mean, I would almost go as to say that the people management and the experience with like being at the top of the game like that and having had success like scaling a team of people, I would almost go so far as to say that's more important. if I was approaching it personally, just because it's such a different thing. Like it's such a different thing than just having the industry experience. It's a different level of pressure that's put on you, and not everyone's cut out for it. So I think that I would want to know that the person is cut out for that and has been through something kind of where they've been kind of battle tested and have come out, because in certain industries you get battle tested, but I don't think you get battle tested in quite the same way as like if you are actually responsible for big groups of people. What do you think?
I agree. I'm of the same mentality that I think specialties are important. There's no doubt about that. If I have two candidates and one has spent their career in plumbing, maybe as a plumber, and has been working on teams, they're seriously a consideration for me. The guy who has worked in plumbing or in trades and understands the trades, and has led teams and operated businesses, like operated the trade, I am more likely to use him as my conduit for the investment than the person who is the tradesman. If the tradesman hasn't led, obviously people who are senior in the higher you go in trades, the more you're doing more stuff with people. So obviously if I get like, a master tradesman, a master electrician, yeah, you're taking my money and I'm saying, please do it. But I think the average, if they're looking at the same experience, I'm more likely to go with the person who has team experience in that region than the specialist who has worked in it. Not to say I wouldn't go with the specialist to bring them in to work on the business, but maybe their equity or their percentage wouldn't be as much as the person who is developing, standardizing, and growing it. So while both are valuable, the person who is going to get the money out of me is the person who has a little bit more of a wide range, but has larger scaled experience with people specifically, because as we've always said, you're buying a business, you are not buying the people. There is no guarantee that any of them will stay when you become the owner. And that's not to scare people, that's just a reality. It doesn't happen like that all the time, obviously, but being able to handle people, manage expectations, and become someone who they trust is a massive part of this endeavor. So that guy's the one who I know that he's going to take my money and going to have the best chance of keeping the team together, growing it, developing it, and doing right by the people internally.
I think so too. Couldn't have said it better myself. As a parting note, what do you think is the single most important thing to take away from considering getting into the home services space as a way to become an entrepreneur or expand your entrepreneurial journey that you've learned so far?
The biggest lesson or the biggest...
What's the biggest thing to be considering if you're trying to get into that space from what you've seen so far?
I would say consider the impact you're going to have in your field of work, specifically private or not private. I'm thinking contract. My brain's scrambled thinking either residential or commercial. Making that decision, the impact you're going to have when you go into it for residential, the impact is going to be very personal, very hand to hand, a lot of trying to be a face, building that rapport of like, hi, I'm Ryan, this is my business, and making sure that the people who work with you as the people doing the service also are taking that care and that level of customer service with them, because that's a big part of it. Excuse me. Whereas commercial, you're dealing with an office manager or some sort of person, who is simply transactional. They need to know who you are. They know your guys are going to show up. But odds are when your person walks in, they're going, hey, apartment 337, it's over there. You got your key, great. End of interaction. They just want to know it's completed, it's done, the resident has the issue resolved. So knowing how you want to manage your clientele and what type of clientele you want to serve, I think is very important.
I agree.
And what about you?
I think it goes along the same lines of what you were saying. I would say, and this is the case with any business really, but I would say your people management skills need to really be on lock in this space. And the thing that separates the home services business owners that I've talked to that are a little bit smaller scale from the ones that are bigger scale is that they've got the people management on lock. They know how to keep people in line, but also treat them well at the same time. They know how to kind of toe that line, and they know how to create a good culture that really permeates beyond themselves. And so if you feel like that's something you're capable of, then I think that's where you really stand out in the space. But I would say that's the case for most industries.
Yeah, I think you nailed it there. It's most prevalent home services because of that connection, but you're never going to escape the people aspect of working in business, because if you're working on your own business and you're the only one in your business, you're probably not scaling as fast as you want. So when you have those problems, they're good problems to have, but it's a very astute observation from someone who has lived and scaled this twice. So very good stuff to hear from you as always. I love picking your brain, especially getting the stories every so often from your staffing company. That was true, like cowboys and ranchers and
Yeah.
like that was some real.
It was absurd.
That's a book, man.
Yeah.
Please.
We'll see.
I'm hoping.
Something could be in the works already.
Well, look at something else, or are we gonna wrap it up?
I think we call it a day on this one. This has been a really interesting company to dissect. I had a blast talking about something that I don't know. I want to know what this company is. I had a blast talking about something that is literally currently run by an elected official and is taking over all of Florida in the plumbing space. You don't see that a lot. You usually see it a lot more fragmented. So I think it's probably a really unique business, and I'm glad we got to take a look at it.
Yeah, this was a great pick. Nice job grabbing this one. What an audible.
It was looking at me. It had big cash flow, and I like big cash flow.
I like big cash. I cannot lie.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, this has been a good one. This has been Deal Flow Live again. I have been your host, Brody Vinson, and
I'm Ryan Santo. You can find me on LinkedIn. Just shoot me a message when you connect. Let me know that you'll watch the show. You just want to connect. And Brody, where can they find you and this replay?
They can find me on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn. Did I say LinkedIn? TikTok, pretty much anywhere on social media, just under Brody Vinson. Feel free to shoot us a message. Tell us your biggest takeaway from the episode. Tell us why you're watching, why you wanted to tune in, what your goals are. We'll see if we can provide any insight and answer any questions you have. And we do this every Tuesday night at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you're watching this now, you're watching it a day after we recorded this one, but typically we're doing these live. And thanks for tuning in either way. We hope to have you again.
Oh, and one more thing. Make sure that you guys follow Brody on Instagram, since I don't use it. We will be doing some more events and stuff, live events, and I believe we have something in the works coming up where you're hosting another. I
will keep you guys posted for the date for my next workshop.
And follow up on that, because it's going to be a great one. The last one was great. It's going to be even better.
And we will have a date here pretty soon. All right. Thanks for tuning in again. Have a good one.
Bye, guys.